And their big fear is that once the World Cup is over and the international media has moved on, that there will be a huge backlash by the Qatari state when the rest of the world isn't watching. And I fear for people, those very brave Qatari campaigners for LGBT rights, for women's rights, and for the rights of migrant workers. I fear for their future. As far as I know, it's the first open LGBT plus protest in Qatar, or indeed any Gulf nation. And the reason that is because the people who live here are too afraid to protest because they would end up in prison. So today's protest by me was in solidarity with their quest for human rights. But it wasn't just about LGBT plus rights, important though that is. It was also about the abuse of women's rights and the abuse of migrant workers in this country. Qatar is in violation of international law across the board. You know, it's shocking to think that Qatar not only can arrest, jail, and potentially give the death penalty by stoning, it also has secret gay conversion centers where LGBT plus people can be detained against their wishes and subjected to what some people have described as a form of psychological and religious brainwashing in an attempt to turn them straight.
Do you
and
know?
Then, of course, if you look at the situation of women.
Sure, sorry to interrupt you.
The situation of women as well.
We've got quite a delay on the line, Peter, so we'll just try and bear with it. And we don't have you for very long, so I just wanted to ask you a couple of further questions. Were you invited to be in the Gulf state to make this protest on behalf of people, or is this something that you have just decided completely of your own volition to go and do?
Well, some Qatari LGBTs, some Qatari women, and some people representing migrant workers asked that there be protests in the run up to the World Cup. So I acted in response to their appeal for protests to try and shine a light on these abuses in the hope that that will prompt the Qatari regime to enact further reform.
What else would those people like to see happen during the World Cup?
Well, it's not just about the World Cup. It's about, you know, for LGBT plus people, they can be subject to police harassment in the street and in shopping malls. They can be subjected to online entrapment, even so-called honor killings, jail time, and as we've heard, potentially death by stoning and forced conversion therapy.
Yeah. But I suppose
For
the point,
women,
but the point of asking the question though is it is a moment where the global spotlight will be on the Gulf state. So, never has there been a more important time for all of these causes to be more talked about and for demonstrations to take place. And I just wonder whether the people that you know there feel that enough will be done. Wearing a rainbow armband, maybe taking a football shirt and not having your nation state displayed on it. I mean, are these things that they think will actually affect permanent change?
No, they don't. And their big fear is that once the World Cup is over and the international media has moved on, that there will be a huge backlash by the Qatari state when the rest of the world isn't watching. And I fear for people, those very brave Qatari campaigners for LGBT rights, for women's rights, and for the rights of migrant workers. I fear for their future. And that's made it all the more important for me to take these risks and come here and do this protest. I think it's so shocking that women in Qatar have to get permission from a male guardian to marry, to get certain jobs, and to study and travel abroad. In terms of divorce, it's very difficult for women. And in the case of divorce, custody of the child always remains with the father legally, no matter how unsuitable and unfit he might be. That is naked misogyny, and it's unacceptable in the 21st century.
Peter, are you safe? Where are you going now? Where are you now, in fact?
I'm now at Qatar Airport, awaiting an onward flight to Sydney, Australia. I think I'm safe. We were told, my colleague Simon Harris from my foundation, he was also detained, and the police deleted videos and photographs from his phone. We were told very clearly that it was in our best interest to go to the airport and leave the country, and that is what we're going to do. But I want to add that we had the protection of British passports.
Yeah.
Qatari human rights defenders don't have that protection, and they should be our number one priority.
And just very briefly, what is the duty of the armchair football fan when the World Cup rolls round?
I mean, people can use social media to highlight the abuse of LGBT plus women's and migrant workers' rights. We can all ask that the England team and the other nations' teams speak out for human rights. There are going to be press conferences. Those are opportunities for those voices to be heard and to put further pressure on the Qatari regime. And I know it will be a huge psychological and emotional boost for Qatari people to know that the world outside understands their plight and cares about the situation here.
Right. So for those of us who are entirely safe to do so, sitting in the comfort of our own homes, do something, tweet something, stick something on Instagram, but don't ignore it.
Absolutely. Even that they may seem very small things, but I'm told that people in Qatar who long for democracy and human rights, international solidarity is so, so important. They really need to know that the world is watching and supporting them.